pour prier fait, bah d'accord, pas besoin de prier pour tout le monde, ouais, pour toute bagaille. Bah, mon café prier, et puis quelque soit, on grand monde, ouais, ou dans toilette la prière, maintenant, les breux, les qui pour, où est le problème, là, dit boss là, ou, le boss là, pas devant boss là, oui, m'étais dans toilette, m'étais dans le travail, moi, et m'y 10 minutes, m'ba bon Dieu 10 minutes, m'ba 20 minutes pour moi-même. Et quand m'ba, ouais, c'est dans le pas moi prier, boss. M'ba prier dans le pauvre, au nom de Jésus. C'est le évoqué, quel évoqué, et puis mon diable, bon, puis go travail.
The United States Capitol. Let's take a moment here and just watch what's happening. Robert?
What a moment for President Joe Biden, elected to the Senate in 1972, sought the presidency 1988, 2008, 8 years as vice president to President Obama. Now this political career, after more than a half century, comes to an end. Some disappointment in Democratic ranks, but a lot of pride in President Biden's inner circle about what he accomplished on domestic and foreign policy over the last 4 years.
I bring in senior White House correspondent Weijia Jiang. She is at the White House. And Weijia, as we look at these pictures of the president and the vice president, they are leaving office with some breaking news, issuing some final preemptive pardons. What have we learned?
That's right, Nora. We know that President Biden has already issued more than 4,000 pardons, especially in his final weeks of office, but he chose to use the final hours of his presidency to issue these preemptive pardons, and it matters because it's not about the personal individuals. It really speaks to the state of politics in this country today. And he essentially said in a lengthy statement that he wants to protect these people from revenge, because even though Gail said revenge, success might be the best form of revenge, we know what the president-elect has said extensively about payback, about retribution, about going after his political enemies. And so that is why today President Biden issued these pardons. He said, I am exercising my authority under the Constitution to pardon General Mark A. Milley, Dr. Anthony S. Fauci, the members of Congress and staff who served on the Select Committee, and the U.S. Capitol and D.C. Metropolitan Police officers who testified before the Select Committee. Of course, that is in reference to investigating what happened 4 years ago on January 6th, and notably it includes some of Trump's fiercest political rivals, including 2 Republicans, former Congresswoman Liz Cheney and former Congressman Adam Kinzinger, along with Adam Schiff. And so, Nora, again, this really speaks to where President Biden is thinking could happen as President-elect Trump takes office. And as you mentioned, he is preparing now to welcome President-elect Trump and the First Lady, Melania Trump, here to the White House for that traditional tea. They will spend a lot of intimate moments together. But Nora, based on the pardons today, based on what we heard from President Biden in his final days here at the White House, speaking about the warnings to come with a new administration, as you can imagine, those moments, those conversations could be tense.
And Weijia, we understand that President Biden just spent his final moments inside the Oval Office?
That's right. This morning, he received his final presidential daily brief, and I did peek in front of the West Wing, as you know very well. If there's a Marine sentry standing there, standing guard, it means that he is inside the Oval Office, and he was there, but he must have had a quick walk to the North Portico to prepare to welcome guests here to the White House. But I did speak to aides this morning who said it was really important to him to have that time in the Oval, because it's not just capping the past 4 years of his presidency, it is capping an entire political career. And we don't know where he goes from here, Nora, but at the end of today, he will be heading off to California for some rest. And we know last night he said, I'm not going anywhere. He said he wants to stay engaged, and we should expect to hear more of him. Nora.
And Weijia, we understand President Biden left a letter for the incoming president?
He is expected to leave a letter, Nora. We are told, of course, he is an institutionalist, which is exactly why he is hosting the Trumps here, why he is participating in all the traditions. And we know that this letter, that presidents leave for each other, means a lot to Donald Trump, because he has spoken about how much the letter that President Obama left him meant to him for years ago. And we know that despite the fact that Trump decided not to participate in all the traditions that we are talking about and celebrating today when it comes to the peaceful transfer of power. Of course, he left town the morning of inauguration. Even Trump left a letter for President Biden on the Resolute desk of the Oval Office. So we certainly expect President Biden to do the same today. Nora?
Wouldn't, frankly, for security and other reasons, but you know, this getting to there and then leaving ended up resulting in the parade that we have, because the early presidents were followed by their enthusiastic supporters back to the White House. Andrew Jackson had such enthusiastic supporters that they came back to the White House and ransacked it. I mean, they went in, punch bowls were thrown everywhere, curtains were torn down, people had to escape through windows. It was just a scene. You know, a joyous scene, but eventually the way they got everyone out of the White House was to take these big punch bowls outside and get the people to leave the White House.
And Jim, I just wanted to pause as President-elect Donald Trump has now arrived at the White House. President Biden and First Lady Jill Biden welcoming Trump and Melania Trump right there. I am going to raise the audio again. We might not be able to hear much, but let's listen in. To say this is really interesting as we're watching President Biden and President-elect Trump standing there, apparently seeming to have a conversation of some sorts. And it's just so interesting to see the interactions, as always, as it was a very contentious, you know, battle almost between the two before President Biden announcing that he would step down and step away from running once again for president. But, you know, Jim, when you take a look at that moment, we did this with J.D. Vance, of course, and Vice President Harris, but what do you make of that as they paused right where that photo opportunity was, but to apparently have some sort of conversation?
The same thing I said about the J.D. Vance moment. This is good for the country to see. The unity is good. The friendship shown between two men is good. Melania Trump looked a little uncomfortable, but you know, that's a difficult role to be in. And when the two of them went in, it looked like they continued to talk. This is, you know, this is reminiscent of Obama and Trump speaking at Carter's funeral too. This is a time for people to begin treating each other as not just political enemies, but as, you know, fellow Americans. If you look over time, that interaction can sometimes be very frosty. If you look at when FDR came in 1933 and Hoover lost, they rode together in an open car with the same blanket over them to the Capitol for the inauguration, and FDR chatted away and Hoover said nothing. He was not happy. Carter and Reagan were similar. I don't think Carter was particularly chatty. I think Reagan, being who Reagan was particularly chatty. When Warren Harding won after the First World War, Woodrow Wilson had a stroke. 19 months earlier, he had tried to pass what was called the Versailles Treaty, the League of Nations. It failed. he, trying to get it passed, Wilson went out into the country to stump for it, had this severe stroke in Denver, was taken back to the White House, had another very severe stroke, and so he was very disabled at that point. And by the time, it came time for Harding to come to the White House and to go with him, they did go over together, but once they got to the Capitol, Harding kind of excused Wilson and said, I will not blame you if you don't want to come out for the ceremony itself, because he really was disabled at that point. And so Wilson was taken to his house on S Street, which is still in existence, a great museum if you're in Washington to go see. But this transition of power, this thing that Reagan talked about in 1981 as being a miracle, it really is a miracle. And it really is interesting. If you look back at Thomas Jefferson, as I told you, there was a really severe fight between Adams and Jefferson. They would later in life become friends and would write letters to each other. They both die on the same day in 1826 on July the 4th, interestingly enough. But during that time, as I said, Adams left and Jefferson went ahead and gave his magnanimous speech. So if you look at what has happened in these transitions of power, many people called that 1801 election a revolution, because it really was the first time we saw political power handed from one party to another. It was the very beginning of parties. And so people saw that as kind of an important revolution and an important development in the American experiment in democracy. And so it has been carried out ever since. And so this scene is a good scene for Americans, and let's hope that the inaugural also continues that feeling of let's unify as a country and move forward as a country. There are a lot of things that need to be addressed in this world and in this country, and people need to work together to have that all happen.
Jim, we appreciate you taking the time to join us here on Live Now from Fox. Time right now is 10 a.m. Eastern, 7 a.m. Pacific. And if you are just joining us here on Live Now from Fox, we are continuing our coverage of Inauguration Day 2025. This is a live look right there outside the U.S. Capitol. As we have been sharing with you, arrivals continue inside the Capitol Rotunda. In fact, this is a live look right here of the Capitol Rotunda, as we have seen family members of President-elect Trump, as well as others, arriving here, getting ready to be seated. Meanwhile, we also want to share with our viewers as well that we were sharing with you the arrival of President-elect Donald Trump and Melania Trump here at the White House. President Biden and First Lady Jill Biden welcoming them in for a tea ceremony prior to the swearing-in ceremony. They are inside the White House. Media not allowed inside. And, of course, one has to wonder what that conversation is going to be like. This is another vantage point there outside the White House. A very snowy ground, a very cold day, which is why in just the second time, the first time since 1985, the swearing-in ceremony will be held inside the Capitol Rotunda. And in fact, this is an aerial view right here. It keeps going in and out, so I didn't want to necessarily bring it to you full, but just a very brief look right here at the aerial view from inside the Capitol Rotunda right there. Just a bird's eye view, and you can see that folks are making their way inside. And this is a live look right here inside Capital One Arena, as, of course, it is a very chilly day. So unfortunately, the hundreds of thousands of individuals who made the journey to the U.S. Capitol to watch as history unfolds, as Donald J. Trump is sworn in as the 47th president, unfortunately, the outside ceremony not happening, but you can already see that thousands of people are packing inside Capitol Run Arena to watch this via the screens. We also know that Trump will then, after being sworn in as president, make his way inside the arena to deliver additional remarks to those as well. And once again, I do want to bring in my colleague Andrew Kraft as we continue our live coverage here, and you can see that lawmakers, Andrew, are arriving there inside Capitol Hill as arrivals do continue. As we continue to discuss all of this, what are your thoughts as we continue to watch this unfold? Truly historic in nature right there.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. You're seeing the former speakers of the House there, McCarthy, Boehner, and Gingrich. So that's always interesting to see them kind of commingling together. Of course, Republican political powerhouses, all three of them really in their own right there. But I just want to go back. Our viewers were just watching that really incredible, somewhat tense scene, I think, between the Bidens and the Trumps. And you just kind of have to get into the head of Trump, into the head of Biden. These are longtime political foes. We know that they cannot stand each other. On the surface, yes, they exchanged pleasantries. They had a short conversation. They took the photo here. But the 2020 election and the 2024 election were very hard-fought contests. We know Trump did not even attend the inauguration of Joe Biden. Of course, things look a lot different this time around. And right now, as we speak, they are having tea together in the White House. And that goes to what Jim Robidahl was saying, that this is what this day is about, the peaceful transition of power. You set all that aside, no matter how hard it is in your marrow and in your bones, that you might be thinking to yourself, if you're Biden or Trump or even Harris with Vance, because electoral defeats are very painful, but you put all that aside for today, one day only. And I think that's what Jim was alluding to. That's what this country is all about. That's what makes us unique. He called it, and many have called it, a miracle, so to speak. So I just wanted to note that there. Of course, we know President-elect Trump's relationship with former House Speaker McCarthy. You'll remember, Stephanie, in the wake of the January 6th Capitol attack, mere days, if not weeks afterward, Kevin McCarthy went down to Mar-a-Lago. And that was really seen as a game-changing moment. That was seen as a moment that was rehabilitating Trump's image in the wake of the January 6th Capitol attack, that there were going to be fellow Republicans who will still stand by him and forgive him for January 6th. So I thought that was interesting. McCarthy, of course, we know how that unfolded for him. He lost the gavel. His own fellow Republicans, 8 of them, ousting him from the speakership now a little bit over a year ago. And so he's on hand. There's going to be a lot of people on hand in the Capitol Rotunda. But that's what I'm thinking of right now. And just for our viewers, to give them up to speed on what's happening live right now, they are, the Bidens and the Trumps, having tea together at the White House before they ride together to the Capitol, to the Rotunda for the swearing-in.
And we're taking a live look, Andrew, of the White House right there as the tea ceremony is underway. And it's always so interesting as we see, the political rivalry, front and center, especially during the election cycle. And, the ability for some, perhaps not all, but some of these politicians to then set that rivalry, that contentiousness aside, and seeing beyond perhaps the political party and seeing the person instead. As we take a look at the political landscape, what do you make of that? Because we were seeing President-elect Trump and former President Barack Obama speaking with one another quite cordially at the funeral service of former President Jimmy Carter. Of course, not everyone is able to, put those politics aside after leaving office, after handing the baton, so to speak. But one has to wonder what the conversation is like now inside the White House, as in just hours, President Biden no longer longer president, and President-elect Trump will be sworn in as the 47th president of the United States, and for the second time.
Right. I mean, history is contingent. Elections matter. I'm sure you have. I know I have lost contests in my personal life, minor, large, grand, small, and it's tough and it hurts, but that's what this day is about. You put those aside, you let bygones be bygones for at least a couple hours.
Absolutely, and that apparently is what they are going to do. And, you know, just to give our viewers just another look right here, I did want to share this live look right here as well, as we are taking a look outside the Capitol Hill right there, outside the Capitol building. You can see buses lining up, most likely to bring in individuals into the Capitol Rotunda. And there is the aerial view. Unfortunately, it does go in and out, as, you know, we do get these live streams from time to time, but I did want to share that with you as we continue this live look right here. You know, Andrew, as we continue to take a look at this, you know, it is so interesting to see who is in attendance, who is being joined, and you can see people from really both parties attending, as well as you know, staunch supporters. In fact, you can see some of these Marco Rubio right there, Senator Marco Rubio, likely no longer to be that, obviously, as we have heard that Governor DeSantis has named his successor. But really the who's who right there in terms of cabinet selections.
Yeah, you're seeing all of the Trump cabinet selections get off that charter bus right there, and we can name them. We know, Stephanie, the confirmation hearings are literally happening as we speak. We saw a lot of that last week. It's going to pick up this week as well. These are the people Trump has chosen to help him lead and plan the agenda for the next 4 years. And so you see them all there get off that charter bus. Pam Bondye, Kristi Noem, Pete Hegseth, and others there.
Absolutely, and I did also want to share this with our viewers, you know, and actually we see some of the outgoing members as well, perhaps, as everyone is seated right here. So, you know, we are awaiting the arrival of both President-elect Donald Trump and President Biden. They, of course, are having their pre-inauguration, you know, ceremony as we continue to see, you know, individuals trickle, you know, but also, you know, as we take a live look right here, this is historic in nature, because this is atypical, Andrew. This is not something that we traditionally see every 4 years with a swearing-in ceremony. I did want to share this with our viewers as well. As you can see, a live look there, you know, a larger, you know, more extensive view of the Capitol building right there, where everyone is congregating. And of course, as we have been sharing and talking about, there of course is a reason why, when it comes to the fact that the mall is completely empty, no one is in attendance, no one is allowed to congregate there because of the frigid weather. And so I did want to share that with our viewers as well. And a beautiful live look right here, you know, from the rooftop, I should say, of the Washington Monument, and this really giving us a clearer picture. We see the American flag there, you know, waving in the wind, and the wind chill making it even feel like single digits right here as we continue to await the arrival of President-elect Trump and, of course, President Biden.
Yeah, that was a really cool shot there atop the White House. To your point, the flag's still at half-staff. If we have the inside of the rotunda, we can point out some of the people that are there. I think that would be helpful for some people watching, because to your point, Stephanie, it is going to be a who's who of the federal government. It's going to be a who's who of Washington. But world leaders are also in attendance. I believe I saw the Argentinian president, Javier Milei, and other former world leaders as well. So we'll do our best pointing out these individuals, pointing out these members of Congress, former members of Congress, incoming and outgoing members of both administrations here. That's always, to your point, interesting to see who's there and who's not, who's seated next to who. And who's standing maybe, but we're finally getting a live picture inside of the rotunda. We were wondering how this was all going to look because they had to pull it together so quickly, and there you see more of these individuals walking into Congress there. And if I recognize anyone, I will definitely point them out here. Looks like Tulsi Gabbard there, Vivek Ramaswamy, other members of the incoming Trump cabinet, and some of the staffers who will work in the second Trump White House. Upon confirmation, of course, there's Elon Musk.
And Andrew,
we can see if we can hear some of the natural sound. That's always interesting too.
It is, and we can see the inside of the rotunda as this, they continue to, weave through shots right here. But, as we take a moment to pause, I do want to bring in Rebecca Castor with Fox News as well as we continue our live coverage right here. And Rebecca, we're taking a live look from inside the Capitol Rotunda as we see lawmakers, officials, and really the who's who of Washington and the business industry, arrive ahead of this swearing-in ceremony. We see the Capitol building right there behind you as we are awaiting the arrival of President-elect Donald Trump. Security, of course, top of mind. Thousands of law enforcement officers spreading out across Washington, D.C. to make sure that what happens is as seamless as possible, a hustle and bustle, if you will, ahead of the swearing-in ceremony. So, can you set the scene for us right now?
Hey, Stephanie, good morning. So speaking with other reporters on our Fox team who have covered inaugurations here in D.C. in the past, they're saying that this security feels a lot more ramped up than previous inaugurations. So even though things have moved indoors, security is still red hot. They have the Capitol building pretty much locked down like a fortress. There are miles and miles of fencing all around the Capitol building, as well as some of the nearby streets. It's really hard to travel by car here in downtown D.C. right now. People are saying that they've been having to walk for several miles to get to some of these locations. But yesterday, thousands of police officers from across the country arrived here in D.C. They were sworn in by the local police chief, and they have been given police powers to help out the D.C. Metro Police as well as the Capitol Police as well. They're expecting at least 19 different protests to possibly happen around the district today, so we're going to be monitoring that. We know that they're going to have drones out, also monitoring events from the sky. So if anybody is here watching locally and they see drones in the air, that is likely what they are doing, monitoring some of these events. A lot of things are going to look different today than they have in the past now that this inauguration is moving inside the Capitol. It's been 40 years since the president was sworn in inside the Capitol Rotunda. Those lawmakers that are entering now to the Capitol Rotunda, that's an exclusive invitation. We're told only about 600 people are going to be able to sit inside the Capitol to be able to watch the swearing in happen in person. There's going to be an overflow room as well. So I think there was some discussion on Capitol Hill, lawmakers lobbying to try to get the best seat in the House and actually be there in person as opposed to that overflow room. But it's just not going to be the same event as if we would have seen Donald Trump outside on the west front of the Capitol taking the oath of office. Of course, all of these changes, primary reason is the weather. This morning, the feels-like temperature was about 12 degrees. The sun is up, so it's warmed up a bit now. It feels a little bit more comfortable outside, but that decision was made with the safety in mind of the hundreds of thousands of people from all over the country who traveled to D.C. and were going to congregate on the National Mall. They've actually shut that down. People that are still here are not able to even be around the National Mall today. They've locked it down because the police just don't want people gathering because of just the safety conditions out here in the weather.
All right, Rebecca, we do appreciate you sharing that with us as we continue to follow the very latest. And we did want to once again share this live look outside the Capitol Rotunda. We saw Jeff Bezos, of course, founder, CEO of Amazon, along with his fiancee, Lauren Sanchez. And I did want to raise the audio to see what we can hear as the arrivals continue at the U.S. Capitol ahead of the swearing-in ceremony. we see former President Bill Clinton along with Hillary Rodham Clinton also in attendance right there, just posing for pictures. And we do know that, all of the living presidents will be in attendance, as well as the former first ladies, everyone except for Michelle Obama, who will not be attending, not giving any particular reason why that is. She also did not attend former President Jimmy Carter's funeral as well. As we continue truly to see the who's who, we do hear some of the music right here, so we're going to pause on the commentary and allow you to listen in. And there we have Rudy Giuliani, the former attorney for President-elect Donald Trump, of course, the former mayor there of New York City, as Rudy Giuliani now making his way inside ahead of the swearing-in ceremony for President-elect Donald Trump. We continue to see this, but I do want to pivot now because we do see here the departure there at the White House, as we do see Second Gentleman Doug Emhoff and soon-to-be First Lady Vice President there, and we are waiting in. I'm going to raise the audio as we are expecting President Biden and President-elect Donald J. Trump to be departing as well momentarily.
And Stephanie, we're just watching, you just saw the second gentleman there, Doug Emhoff, with the incoming second lady, Usha Vance, there, leave the White House. We know a tea is happening between the Bidens and Trumps as we speak, but we were seeing a slew of dignitaries there enter into the Capitol Rotunda, including many, many members of the House and the Senate. You also, I'm not sure if some of our viewers caught, you saw Chief Justice of the Supreme Court John Roberts there walking into the Rotunda. And from what I understand, I believe he will be administering the oath of office. Trump has two Bibles that will be used to administer the oath, his mother's Bible, and then, of course, the very, very famous Lincoln Bible from 1861. That's been a hallmark. It's been a tradition for many, many inaugurations past. So just a really, really beautiful live look. Let's keep listening.
Ready, post. Ready, post.
And Stephanie, in